Instead, I ended up in an all-out war with a woman named Patricia who thought HOA rules gave her ownership of everything in sight. She and her fishing guests turned my dock into their personal hangout, laughed at my signs, and then called the cops on me for blocking access to my own lake. What followed? Lies, threats, vandalism, and a lawsuit that ultimately dismantled the entire HOA. Yeah, it gets wild. This one's got 3 twists, 1 arrest, and a whole lot of petty. You're watching Storiesofqa. Drop a comment if you've ever met a Patricia. I thought I'd finally found my slice of heaven when I bought that lakefront cabin last spring. I was 38 years old, working as a freelance consultant, and I'd been dreaming of a place like this for as long as I could remember. The cabin sat on 12 acres, with a private lake. Not huge, maybe half an acre of water, but it was mine. All mine. The real estate agent kept emphasizing that word, private. Private lake. Private dock. Private everything. It was perfect. I could work from home, enjoy the quiet, maybe catch a fish or 2 on weekends. Looking back, I should have known that word private would become the center of everything that happened next. The first few weeks were exactly what I hoped for. I'd wake up, make coffee, and sit on my dock watching the morning mist rise off the water. Nothing but birdsong and the occasional splash of a jumping fish. My home office had a perfect view of the lake, and honestly, my productivity skyrocketed. My stress plummeted. For the first time in forever, I felt like I belonged. I'd worked years to afford this place, skipped vacations, freelanced nonstop. So yeah, maybe I got a little protective. Wouldn't you? Then, on a Thursday morning in early June, I heard voices. Loud, laughing voices. I looked up from my laptop and saw them. 5 people setting up fishing gear on my dock. Coolers, folding chairs, a radio blasting country music. They were making themselves right at home. There was one woman, probably late 50s, with perfect blonde hair and an outfit that practically screamed, "I demand to speak to your manager." She barked orders like she was running a guided tour. The others, 2 men and 2 women, obeyed like they'd done this 100 times before. One guy casually tossed a beer can into the lake. I saw red. I walked outside, trying to stay calm. "Excuse me," I said, heading toward the dock. "This is private property." The blonde woman, Patricia, I'd soon learn, barely looked up. She laughed. "You're new here, honey," she said, focused on her tackle box. "Everyone's been using this lake for years. It's basically community property." That honey made my skin crawl, but I kept my tone level. "Ma'am, I own this property. The lake is private. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." That got her attention. She stood up slowly and gave me a look like I'd just threatened national security. "Listen, sweetie, I'm Patricia DuBois, secretary of the Willowbrook HOA, and I'm telling you how things work around here. This lake's been used by residents for 20 years. You can't just come in and change everything." Her little fishing cult nodded along like she was quoting scripture. I was dumbfounded. Was I really being gaslit on my own dock? I went inside, grabbed my deed and property survey, and brought them out. "Look," I said, showing her the documents. "This entire area, including the lake, is mine. It's clearly marked private property." Patricia glanced at the papers like I'd handed her a grocery list. "Papers can be wrong, honey. Common use trumps ownership sometimes. You might want to look into that." One of the guys, fishing vest covered in lures, laughed. Kids got a lot to learn about living in a community. I stood there, holding undeniable proof of ownership, while 5 people openly treated my land like a public park. The next morning, I installed a sign. "Private property, no fishing. Violators will be prosecuted." Clear, legal, professional. I figured that would be the end of it. I was wrong. At 10 a.m., I looked out my window, and there they were. Again, all 5 of them. Patricia pointing at my new sign, laughing. One of the women gave it a thumbs-down selfie. Another guy fake cast his fishing line right at it. The audacity. I had to sit down just to process it. I went outside, phone in hand, recording. "Folks, you're trespassing. I'm asking you one more time, leave." Patricia didn't even turn around. "We heard you the first time, honey. We're not going anywhere." The fishing vest guy waved me off. "You can't own a lake, son. Water belongs to everyone." That's when I realized. These people truly believe their nonsense. 20 years of trespassing had convinced them they had a right to it. Maybe I should have called the cops then and there. But I didn't. I still thought I could reason with them. Mistake number 1. That weekend, I researched everything. Property law, trespassing statutes, HOA authority. The law was clear. It was my land. My lake. They had no right. Patricia's common use argument? Total garbage. You can't claim usage rights just by ignoring someone else's ownership. Still, I figured maybe, just maybe, a calm conversation could settle things. So I built a small wooden chain barrier along the dock path and added a second sign. Private property, open to discussion for reasonable access. Not hostile, just a boundary and an olive branch. I should have known better. Monday, noon, knock on the door. Patricia, holding a plate of cookies and flashing a smile, so fake it should have come with a warning label. Hi there, neighbor. I think we got off on the wrong foot. I brought you some cookies to welcome you to the community. I nearly laughed, but I accepted the cookies and invited her in. I figured, one last try at diplomacy. Big mistake. She looked around my kitchen like she was evaluating it for a home tour. You know, she said sweetly, you really ought to reconsider this whole lake situation. All I wanted was a quiet life by my private lake. Instead, I ended up in an all-out war with Patricia, a woman who thought HOA rules gave her ownership of everything in sight. She and her fishing buddies turned my dock into their personal hangout, laughed at my warning signs, and even called the cops on me for blocking access to my own lake. But this time, I had something different, clear surveillance footage. When Officer Williams reviewed the video, he paused on Patricia's face. This is pretty clear evidence of vandalism and criminal trespass. We'll need copies for our report. I want to press full charges, I said firmly. They've trespassed multiple times, and now they're destroying my property. Williams nodded. Based on this, we can arrest all three of them for vandalism, trespass, and possibly conspiracy. They planned this and acted together. Within the hour, patrol cars headed out. I watched from my window as Patricia was led away in handcuffs, yelling at the officers. Her two accomplices were arrested soon after. According to Williams, they were all facing felony charges. This should send a message, he told me. But we'll still need you to come in for a formal statement. Watching Patricia get cuffed should have felt like victory, and it did, for a moment. But I couldn't stop wondering, what kind of person smiles while destroying something someone else loves? And would this really be the end? I didn't think so. Then came the twist. The arraignment hearing was scheduled for the following Thursday. I was ready to testify, and my lawyer had filed additional civil suits for harassment, defamation, and property damage, as well as legal action against the HOA for enabling her behavior. Between the criminal charges and the civil suits, my lawyer told me, Patricia's looking at real jail time and financial ruin. But I have a feeling this story isn't over. He was right. That morning, as I got dressed for court, the doorbell rang. A well-dressed older man stood outside, holding a briefcase. Mr. Hale, he said, my name is Marcus Thorne. I was president of the Willowbrook HOA before Patricia took over. I have information relevant to today's hearing, very relevant. I let him in. He looked exhausted, not scheming. Once seated, he said, I've followed your situation closely, and it's time the truth came out about Patricia. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder that made my previous evidence look like a pamphlet. Patricia orchestrated a coup to remove me, Marcus explained. She accused me of financial mismanagement, but the truth is, she had been embezzling HOA funds for years. She had to get rid of me before I found out. Inside the folder were devastating documents, bank transfers to her personal accounts, forged signatures, fake invoices, all pointing to over $50,000 in theft. That's not even the worst part, Marcus added. She planned to cover it up by selling off community assets. Your lake was just the beginning. He laid out proposed contracts to developers, the community park, the playground, even the HOA office building, all scheduled for sale under the guise of improvements, with Patricia set to pocket millions in consulting fees. She didn't want a neighborhood, I said, stunned. She wanted a portfolio. Exactly, Marcus replied. And your lake was the final piece. He handed me copies of the evidence and said he would be testifying at the hearing and filing formal complaints with the FBI. Courtroom bombshell. At court, what was supposed to be a simple vandalism hearing exploded. Marcus's testimony and evidence were overwhelming. The judge immediately ordered a recess and requested a review of the new allegations. Patricia's lawyer looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Patricia went pale as Marcus calmly dismantled her reputation. By the end of the day, she was facing new charges: embezzlement, fraud, conspiracy, and violation of fiduciary duty. The vandalism charges were just the surface. My lawyer filed expanded civil suits seeking hundreds of thousands in damages, and justice was finally happening. Fallout and consequences. The FBI's involvement triggered a full state audit of the HOA. More fraud was uncovered. Several board members had accepted kickbacks from the development deals. The entire HOA leadership was removed. Marcus was reinstated to clean up the mess. Patricia's fishing buddies testified against her in exchange for reduced charges. Turns out, she had paid them small amounts to harass property owners who didn't go along with her schemes. 6 months later, Patricia pleaded guilty to multiple felonies. She was sentenced to 4 years in prison and ordered to pay over $100,000 in restitution. The civil suits bankrupted her. Her house was foreclosed. Her assets were seized. She lost everything. The HOA was rebuilt from the ground up: new leadership, real transparency, and a fresh start for the entire neighborhood. The ending. Some mornings, I sit on my dock with a cup of coffee, watching the mist roll off the lake, and I still think about the day Patricia hissed, "This isn't over." She was right. It wasn't over. It ended worse for her. What started as a peaceful life turned into an HOA war filled with petty violations, vandalism, police reports, and courtroom drama. In the end, Patricia lost everything, while I gained peace, trust, and a real community. And the lake? Still mine. Still private. If you've ever dealt with petty HOA drama or nosy neighbors with too much time and too little sense, this one's for you. Drop a comment, hit like if you've been there, and subscribe for more wild stories right here on Stories of QA, where HOA nightmares get unpacked and justice actually lands. Thanks for watching. Oncoming Fist.